Today on Boy Meets Film, we're reviewing the Meike 25mm T2.2 Cine Lens. Hey fellow film gear fiends, Matt here from Boy Meets Film. So I really wanted to release this review last week on the Meike 25mm T2.2 Cine Lens. This is a micro four thirds lens. I'm shooting with my GH5, but I really wanted to get some more real world usage of it. I wanted to spend some additional time with this lens because I want to be able to either recommend it or tell you to steer clear from it from a real honest point of view. And in order to be able to do that, I wanted to spend some more time with it. Spoiler alert, I really do like this lens, but let's jump in and see the specifics and tell you why I like it. Before we get too much more into the review, I do want to say that these are my thoughts alone. Meike did not pay me to say anything. They didn't give me a script. They were kind enough to send me the lens to take a look at, but wanted my honest opinion and wanted me to tell them what I thought of it and tell everyone what I thought of it. So these are my honest opinions, and let's jump into it. Another quick disclaimer. I am a storyteller. I love filmmaking and storytelling. I'm not a super technical individual when it comes to filmmaking. I don't know all the ones and zeros and the ins and outs of all the technical terms and all of the technology when it comes to lenses and cameras and gimbals and everything like that. When I review something, I review it from the standpoint of a storyteller and a filmmaker in a real-world environment. So I want to be able to tell you what I think of a product from a real-world standpoint and whether it makes sense for you to have it as far as ease of use goes and the quality you're going to get from it, not necessarily from a technical standpoint. So knowing that, let's jump into the review. First of all, as I mentioned in the unboxing video, if you saw that, it is a full metal housing, which is really nice. It's got a nice solid feel to it. It is a little bit heavy. If you're used to a really light rig, especially if you've been using Panasonic lenses, if you're using a GH5 or you're on a micro four thirds camera with some really light lenses, you might be a little bit in for a shock with this because it is a heavier lens. It's not heavy in comparison to some of the lenses I've used, especially coming from some of the Canon L glass, the larger lenses, but for a micro four thirds lens, it is a little bit big. I like that because I think that it gives me some solidity, it helps me to really get a feel for the lens, and it makes me feel more like I'm shooting on quality glass. Along with the full metal housing, you do have a manual aperture ring and a manual focus wheel. These are both manual. These will not work on our autofocus settings for your cameras. It has a really nice long focus throw, so you can get some really good rack focus shots. It is easy to focus because it's got a nice stiffness almost to the focus wheel. It allows you to really get some smooth focus turns. The same thing with the Aperture. They both have a really smooth motion when you're using those manual wheels. I think that it's even better than my Rokinon. I have a Rokinon 50mm that I use fairly often when I need that focal length, and it's a little bit loose on the focus wheel. I either jump past my focus point sometimes, or I might hit the little bit too far on the way back. But generally speaking, this lens was very easy to hit my focus points on because it was so smooth motion to move. Now, speaking of focus, I think this lens has a really nice depth of field to it. When it's stopped all the way open, it has a good solid depth of field. I was able to get some really cool rack focus shots and get some really nice creative images in this. That's been a challenge a little bit coming from a Super 35mm. It's a little bit harder to get some nice shallow depth of field in this mirrorless GH5 along with the micro four thirds lenses that I've used. So you have to kind of keep that in mind, but I think this lens does it really well, and I'm excited to continue to use it. From what I can tell from everything I've done, it has a nice sharp focus. It's a good quality sharp glass. It doesn't put any kind of look onto your image. Sometimes you buy lenses because of the way that it looks or because of the way that it gives you some sort of color cast on it or something along those lines. This lens is very basic. So keep that in mind. You're not going to get anything super spectacular as far as look goes out of this lens from a creative standpoint, but it does give you a base so you can build the creativity off of that. One thing that I did notice, which was a little bit odd, but I ended up getting it to work fine, was using ND filters. Since I'm shooting with a GH5, I have to use the circular ND filters and screw them on the end of the lens. I went to screw an ND filter on the end of this lens, and it just had a hard time screwing on, almost like the threads were caught. I did get it to work, and it seems to work fine now, but keep that in mind. I don't try to force it. I'm always afraid to force something onto a lens or onto anything that has any kind of threading, because if it gets stuck or if it cross threads, you're in trouble. I was able to carefully thread it on, and now the threading seems to be fine. I don't know if it was a burr in the threading or what it was, but that's just something I ran into. You may not if you get this lens, and it's not like it's a big deal as long as you're careful with it, but just one of the things that I noticed. I did do some bokeh tests on this lens. It has a good, decent look to it. You can see here, I'm happy with it. I love throwing Christmas lights up behind people if I want to get a nice, interesting look, but that's just me. I did some tests just to see what it did and what it was like, and I think that it works pretty good. As far as color interpretation goes, the lens itself seems to work really well. Obviously, your mileage is going to vary based on your camera itself, but I love my GH5 and the way that it interprets color anyways. With that lens, as I mentioned before, you're not going to get a lot of specific interpretation that's different from your lens. It's just going to be pretty base. Overall, I am very happy with this lens. I'm excited to keep using it. As a 25mm, it is a 50mm essentially on my GH5 with the crop factor. So I'm excited to see what other lenses that they come out with. They are coming out with more lenses later this year, they said. A whole plethora of them. I think there's another 4 focal lengths coming out. I'm not 100% sure which ones they are. I think that there's one that's wider than a 25mm, but don't quote me on that. I think it's like a 17 or it might be a 16. I can't remember what they said. And then there's a couple more longer focal length ones. I think maybe like a 50mm or a 35. And I know that there's like an 80 or 100mm too coming out, I believe, a longer one. But overall, if those lenses are anything like the quality of this, then I'm excited to get them and to take a look at them, because this lens to me is a better buy if you're on a Micro Four Thirds sensor than the Rokinon lenses with adapters. I have some Rokinons and I'm more than happy to switch over to these because number one, the build quality is excellent. I'm excited for it. With the Rokinon, I tend to get a little bit of like a green cast or something on some of the footage that I shoot, depending on what I shoot and the lighting. So I'm not super thrilled with that. That could just be my lens, but that's just what I've experienced with my Rokinon, the 50mm that I have. I don't get any of that from this lens at all, no color casting, and I really like that. Just overall, the build of the lens really sells it for me. The ability to get a nice focus pull on it, the nice aperture wheel. This is a great lens as far as I'm concerned, and that is my opinion and mine alone. I'll put a link in the description if you want to take a look at it. It was sold out last I saw, but I'll keep updating the link if there's another one for you to take a look at it if you're really interested in getting it. Like I said, I do recommend this lens as a great prime. It's a cinema prime. It is on the lower price range with just over $300, so you really can't go wrong with that. If you're looking for a 25mm or a 50, if you're on a Micro Four Thirds GH5 like I am, then it's definitely something to take a look at. Thanks so much for watching this episode of Boy Meets Film. If you liked the video, please give it a thumbs up and let me know in the comments. What do you think? Are you going to stick with Rokinon? Are you going to try Meike? Have you tried Meike? And just give me your thoughts. I'd love to know what you think. Also, we are working on trying to create a community of people. I don't know if anybody saw my YouTube story or noticed that at the beginning of this episode I said Film Gear Fiends, but what I want to do is create kind of this community. I want this to be a community channel, a place where we can have fun together and just learn together. So I've thrown out a couple of names out there. I'm thinking either Film Gear Fiends or Filmmaker Fiends or Filmmaking Fiends or whatever it is. If you have another idea, let me know in the comments. But the primary two right now I'm thinking are Film Gear Fiends or Filmmaker Fiends. So out of those two, let me know in the comments what you like better, or if you have something that's even better, then let me know that. I'd love to consider that as well. Thank you so much for watching. If you enjoy our videos, please give it a thumbs up and subscribe, and don't forget to hit the bell icon so you get notified when we do put up new videos. Thanks so much for watching, and we'll see you next time.